Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Prepare for Your ERP Implementation with 4 Smart Strategies, a webinar sponsored and presented by Ultra Consultants and Terillium. My name is Tim Green, and I'm the marketing manager for Ultra Consultants, and I'll be hosting the webinar. Before we get going, there are 3 things to know. Attendee phones will be muted for the duration of the presentation. Please send me a chat if you run into any technical difficulties during the event. You can submit questions at any time using the Q&A feature. We'll address your questions at the end of the discussion. You can access both the chat and Q&A features of Zoom by placing your cursor over the bottom center of your webinar screen and clicking on the icons. Today's session will run for 30 minutes and end at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Our agenda is simple. We'll begin the webinar by introducing our presenters and their companies and services. Then we'll move on to the discussion on how to intelligently prepare for your ERP implementation and how to ensure that your ERP solution delivers improved business performance. And following the discussion, we'll preview additional resources that we'll provide to you in a follow-up email, including a link to the webinar recording. Then we'll move on to Q&A for any remaining time. If you haven't been introduced to Terillium before, it's an ERP implementation firm that specializes in the implementation of Oracle's 3 main ERP systems, Oracle Cloud, JD Edwards, and NetSuite, and it's done that for 27 years. Terillium has 170 full-time consultants across the United States and can brag that its functional and development resources bring to every job an average experience level of 16 years. Terillium has won 19 Oracle Partner Excellence Awards and has completed more than 700 implementations over its long history. And through all that time, Terillium has developed a unique and proven methodology, one that consistently delivers success. To learn more about Terillium and its services, go to terillium.com. Ultra Consultants is an independent enterprise software consulting firm serving the manufacturing and distribution industries in North America and around the world. Leveraging our ERP and business process improvement expertise, industry experience, rigorous methodology, and today's best practices, we help organizations realize the bottom line benefits of modern enterprise technology. Being independent means we use a neutral, fact-based structure to support the technology selection process and help our customers find the right solution for their industry, organization, and processes. And because we focus exclusively on manufacturing and distribution, we offer exceptional industry knowledge, nuanced insight, and a deep experience-based understanding of what's important and what isn't, and what works and what doesn't. To learn more about our business process improvement, technology selection, and solution implementation management services, go to ultraconsultants.com. Today's presenters are experts in manufacturing and distribution technology solutions. Aaron Olin is a business process improvement, supply chain management, and forecasting and planning expert with more than 20 years of ERP and executive management experience. In addition, he offers expertise in making the business case for change and finding the opportunities and value delivered by enterprise solutions. Chris Rolfe is a senior project manager at Terillium. He's led numerous successful implementations of ERP systems over his 33-year career. He has managed a variety of project types ranging from minor version upgrades to larger net new implementations, mergers and acquisitions, and most recently, several large JDE World to JDE 9.2 implementations. Chris is a PMP certified professional. Hey, Aaron and Chris, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Tim.
So let's get to it. Here we go. To borrow an old phrase, for a successful ERP project, it's important to know the whys and wherefores. So let's talk about the questions that must be asked and answered before you start. And while we're doing that, I'd like you to share the relevant implementation strategies that help ensure an ERP project achieves its goals. The first question is about alignment and organizational support. Do your project team members, executives, and everyone in the company understand the business case?
Hi, Tim. I'll go ahead and provide some input on that. This is Chris. Yeah, when I talk about business case, I talk about what are the driving forces that you're trying to achieve when doing an ERP implementation. It's important that everybody within the organization and the project team understands those business cases And by business case, I talk about the rationale and some of the benefits you expect to achieve. Many times, project managers and project executives will put together a project charter at the beginning of a project, detailing all the benefits and cost savings that will be achieved with the project. But then as the project progresses through the different phases of the project, many times those goals or those opportunities or cost savings are not realized. So it's important that, that as you go through the different phases of the project, that you keep a keen eye on what are those business cases and make sure that the project stays on track to achieve those when the project's completed. A good example of that might be cost savings due to workforce reduction in your plants. Many times there's automation that's done in a plant in order to reduce headcounts and to reduce labor charges. But in the opposite, many times that workforce reduction causes a workforce increase in other areas. So it's good to ensure that as you go through each phase of the project, that you truly are going to be realizing some of those business case benefits that you detailed out in the charter. Eric?
Yep, I'll just, that's great, Chris. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Yeah, just to add on to what Chris was saying, I think part of the initial setup for the business case is to understand where those benefits are going to be across the entire organization. So the impetus or the where the idea to get a new ERP comes from could be from several functional areas within an organization. It could come from finance, it could come from operations, but really the benefits have wide-ranging scope according to different functional groups. And the idea is to really look at it as a whole and not to focus particular benefits on any one functional group at the expense of others. There's a natural give and take. There's going to be some work that is increased in some areas, but as a whole, the idea is to ensure that your organization understands at different levels why this is taking place, why there's going to be a new technology implemented, and then to track those throughout the life of the implementation. So as you're going through, for example, design sessions, in many of the business cases I've worked on, the opportunities that are uncovered and quantified are in the hundreds, and really trying to summarize those and attach them to design sessions through implementation, so that you could say we have recognized in the business case that a particular benefit was going to be realized, and to check in on that as a sort of compass point to ensure that as you're designing, you're not essentially duplicating your existing process, using the new technology as a way to improve those processes, and to ensure that really all the internal stakeholders understand what the scope is. So an example of that might be legacy modules that will be replaced. This is always a question in terms of which existing pieces of technology are highly customized and remain in place. So getting those tough questions out of the way early on will prevent some challenges organizationally as you proceed forward. And I would say just to prep the organization is to ensure that that people approach the process with an open mind. As we like to say at Ultra, ERP implementations they're not technology projects; they're business improvement projects. So they are real opportunities to optimize and to improve areas of your organization.
All right, well, that actually kind of leads us straight into question two. So people will be a lot more comfortable if, everything is set up. So the second question to ask is, have you taken the steps to ensure a smooth transformation of your processes and organization?
Yes, and so just to follow on with what I was discussing about establishing that budget and that scope in advance. This is especially true when working with a multi-location environment, determining which areas are going to be implemented in what phases. Again, going back to those legacy systems, making sure that it's a realistic scope in terms of all the technology that's going to be changing. And also being mindful, referring back to the business case, about things like headcount reductions. This is typically, I advise my clients not to come out front with that type of calculation and publish that. That can just, it's a surefire way of reducing engagement in the project. And as Chris mentioned, sometimes there's reductions in one area and increases in the other. So really, I just there's a whole host of operational. We consider them like hard quantifiable benefits versus softer benefits. So really getting the full mixture of all those opportunities into the process and ensure that that's communicated widely. There's a couple other little things that could be potentially helpful to consider. For example, the idea of connectivity. So this is true for some clients that are going from, say, like a hosted or on-premise solution in a location to moving into the cloud. So one thing, I work quite a bit with agricultural companies, and oftentimes they might be in locations which have not the greatest internet connectivity. So recently worked with a client and we did some testing on that, and we found that the lead time to get a faster internet speed was over a year, because it required construction and negotiation with the local city. So that was one area that, had we waited until we're actually in the testing phase to determine that the latency or the speed of the internet was not fast enough, would have been a problem for implementation. So getting that out of the way was also helpful. And then finally, I'll say just it's never too early to start thinking about master data, which for those, just to define that, that's basically your items, your vendors, your customers, and some other areas. But it's rare that I encounter an implementation where master data is not a constraint or an issue that requires more time than what people typically estimate. So it's never too early to start thinking about that. In fact, developing the master data governance even before implementation starts is really a good technique, and that could be just as simple as who has the keys or who has the control to enter a new item or a new vendor, and putting some form of approval structure in place so that your organization gets into the habit of controlling the data that's flowing into your systems, so that when you get into user-based permissions in an ERP, you'll already have those habits formed.
Yep. One other thing that I'll add to that, Aaron, is when you're taking the steps to ensure a smooth transition, some of the things, as you mentioned, is the data, making sure that any type of data cleansing is done prior to the project, understanding what your data retention policies are for both legal and company requirements, because as you're transitioning data from a legacy system to your new ERP system, you typically don't want to bring over all the data, especially some of the older data that has data integrity issues and things of that nature. So understanding your data retention policies and requirements is important. If there's any type of departmental restructuring or anything like that that's going to go on that you know is going to happen, it's best to do that prior to your ERP implementation project, just to eliminate any type of disruptions or confusion that could happen. Additionally, if you've got other large projects that are going to be going on, it's best to minimize those when you come to the point in time when you're going to implement your ERP system. It's important to eliminate other projects that could cause confusion or cause conflict with your ERP project to ensure that things go more smoothly.
So you're talking about people there. So that actually is the next question. Do you have the right people to guide and execute the project? And just like what you were saying, Chris, do they have the time required available to be successful?
Yes, this is a very important topic. I've seen clients that they embark on an ERP implementation project and they feel that it's going to be just a minor disruption to the normal work that their project team normally does, and it's always underestimated the amount of work that not only consultants, if you bring consultants in to help you with your ERP implementation, but it's frequently underestimated the amount of involvement that the internal project team, not just IT, but from a business user standpoint, ensure that they've got proper bandwidth in order to complete the project. I've seen companies that put that project on their employees and ask them, just to work some additional hours. Doing that for a month or two is one thing, but doing that over 12 to 16 month project is too much to ask from your people. And then one of the things Aaron touched on was ensuring that your third party resources, if you plan on hiring a consulting firm or plan on hiring specialized skilled resources, before you embark on your ERP project, make sure that you're gonna be able to get those resources when you need them. I think Aaron touched on the Wi-Fi issue. That's a perfect example. I've seen a project that started up, got halfway through the project, realized that they were going to need to boost the network connect or the network capability within their building, and they ended up getting put on a 1-year waiting list to have that done. So had they worked with their vendor in advance and made sure that they were going to have the capacity, it would have avoided a significant delay. So just making sure that your team is ready, make sure they have the bandwidth, and make sure you have the type of skills available prior to starting the ERP project is important.
Yeah, excellent, Chris. Yeah, and I would just like to add, a few things. The just making sure that the project team actually represents a good cross function of your organization. So the usual way these start out is following an org chart, a management structure that mirrors the existing organizational structure. That's while that might be important for say for example approval of designs throughout implementation, it's also best to choose some members that are potentially more junior, tech savvy, up and coming, folks that are not afraid to challenge the existing procedures and really are going to think of the best way to achieve the project objectives, and are not too tied to the status quo. So really ensuring that you have a good mixture of folks that are going to add to the project that doesn't always align with who reports to who in which department. So it's one of the early phases is to establish that team And these are the questions that I'm often asking my clients when we're establishing those teams, because again, the initial impulse is to just say, well, here's who runs supply chain. That should be the team that's actually part of it. Now that's important to get, as I said, the approval and the stage gates through a management structure, but the actual work of design and implementing can be can sort of cut through some of those reporting structures, and there could be some good benefits in there, provided you establish the framework and the parameters for the involvement of whoever's on those teams. Another couple pieces are Chris touched on the competing projects. ERP implementations almost never exist in a vacuum. There's other things going on with companies, other projects. So understanding the allocation of the resources that are going to be in that project. So typically it's done through, this is going to take X% of your day over a certain period of time, and really engineering as best as you can what that's going to look like throughout the life of the project, to ensure that you have the correct resources, that those resources have the time, and being able to see in advance if you need to, for example, backfill some particular resources to accommodate the project.
There it is.
We've talked a lot about time. So the fourth question is your timeline realistic? What is the right project pace?
Yeah, this is an area of a bit of crystal ball and experience that really goes into understanding the longer implementation. It might be tempting to get everything 100% before go live, and that's usually the goal. And the reality is that things do change, and you need to build in buffers. There's some common examples of things that come up, like, for example, restructuring of your chart of accounts. Oftentimes, especially if you're coming out of an accounting environment that is not dimensional in nature and you're going into a new ERP, there's a lot more flexibility, specifically with your chart of accounts, that you can organize and slice and dice based on dimensions, and you don't need such a complex. And that realization is often found out while you're in implementation, but we try and encourage our clients really to get that sorted out in advance, to start thinking about the impacts of dimensional accounting and how that could streamline the organization. So these are the different areas. Another point I would say in terms of the pace of the project, there's another tempting, again, I'm dealing with agricultural typically, which has a season and a harvest. So there's oftentimes a short window of go live that is desired. And it's just, I always caution to not set too much, not to put too much into that, and to really look at the project and all its components and make a realistic time frame that's going to accommodate for some of these extra pieces that come up inevitably.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add to that, Aaron, is I see many times we'll estimate a project, and we'll estimate it, for example, to be a 12 to 14 month project, and the business executives that we're talking to them about the project, they're trying to be aggressive, they're trying to be go-getters, and they'll ask us to cut it down to a 6 to 8 month project or a 7 to 9 month project, and we try everything we can to discourage that. Some of the downsides, as you mentioned, we end up being asked to shortcut some of the testing that gets done. Well, shortcutting testing is something that you're inevitably going to have backfire on you. If you go live without sufficient testing. I also had a client. I'll give you an example. I had a client that had a 10-month project that we estimated to be 12 to 14 months, and they decided to start it in January because they wanted it done before the Christmas season, which was one of their busy seasons. and they were hoping to have the project done by the end of October. We advised against that because if the project got extended, it was going to be a go live right in the middle of their busy season, and we ended up going forward with a shorter time frame. And as you can probably anticipate, the project ended up getting pushed back. We ended up going live right in the middle of December, and we had issues because of we shortcutted testing and such. We had issues with distribution and shipping and so on, and it impacted the company tremendously. So when it looks like a 12 to 14 month project, as Aaron mentioned, make sure that you put some buffer time into it. If it looks like 12 to 14 months, plan on 14 to 16 months. And you can always shoot for earlier, but make sure that you take into account that if it does get delayed or get pushed back, what is the impact on the business going to be? Because sometimes that impact can be grave. So, Tim, back to you.
All right, Aaron and Chris, we've dealt with our 4 questions. Let's give people a chance to ask their own questions. We have a couple minutes left. Thank you for your insight and information. We'll be moving on to the Q&A in a minute. There's still time to submit your questions. You can access the Q&A feature of Zoom by hovering your cursor over the bottom center of your webinar screen and clicking on the Q&A icon. As promised, we'll be sharing additional resources with everyone who registered for this webinar in a follow-up email, maybe tomorrow, but probably more likely next week. Specifically, a link to the webinar recording and a link to download a great new ebook, The Comprehensive ERP Success Guide, which was produced by Terillium and Ultra and offers 35 pages of information, insight, and expert advice, and virtually everything you need to know about how to manage a successful ERP project. So let's get to the Q&A. Let's see what we've got. All right, we have a question here. So many companies skip building a complete business case because they view it as simply justification for a project that everyone already knows is necessary. What is the value of a full business case?
It's a good question. I think there's a couple different shades of business case. There's the full-blown return on investment, which is quantified, and that's typically something that might be required to get the project budget approved. But typically the remedy for that is a case for change, which is a slight twist on the business case. It's not as numbers driven. It's things like, what does this new technology enable us to match with our strategic goals? So it might be if you're opening a new channel and your existing technology limits that capability, but it's something on the horizon. It might be difficult to quantify what that looks like in the form of a business case, but the fact that that transformation is now going to allow for a new channel to be open, whether it be e-commerce or a different mechanisms, newer technology will enable you to do that. So it's not always a requirement to have a very specific return on investment calculation, but understanding what potentials a new system opens up is, I think, quite valuable.
Chris, do you have thoughts on business cases and their value? We're
Yeah,
like a minute.
I think most companies are embarking on projects of this type with specific benefits in mind, and it's important for them to detail that out. It's important that they share that with the project team, as we mentioned earlier, and keep a close eye on those business cases, and ensure that the opportunities and the benefits are realized at the end of the project. Many times they're not, because they lose track or lose sight of what the overall purpose was, or the original purpose was of embarking on that project.
Sure, you have to know where you're going to know when you're there, right? So
Right.
that's all the time we have. I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut us off right now. We're at the bottom of the hour. Thank you, Aaron and Chris. Like I said, it's all the time we have. So that concludes the webinar for all of us at Ultra and Terillium, and for Aaron Olin and Chris Rolfe. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again on another webinar soon.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.